This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
The definition of a monster that is not in the dictionary is a creature that is willing to take away innocence, one who focuses on objectifying a person and failing to see their humanity, caring only for gratification while ignoring the repercussions on another. The world is a harsh place, and monsters are very real. They have existed throughout the millennia, going mostly undiscovered, empowering their reign of terror. Finally, the human race has been charged with the protection of that innocence. Stealing a soul should never go unpunished. The damage has already been done, and our hearts are heavy coming to terms with the violation. So we must educate, as our resolve is the only weapon to fight this evil. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button like it owes you money. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content. Please comment, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. Now, tonight's an odd one. We're making lemonade out of lemons, but it's an important topic for us to talk about. I have Tom Flynn in here, and tonight we are going to talk about the suffering of the worst offense. But there's a whole backstory in the guest that we had tonight.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into it. This one's going to be tough. All right.
Yeah.
This one's going to be real tough. And I think it would be equally as tough if the guest did come in.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give everybody, before we get into the social media question, a little backstory, a little hook, a little keep people watching. Tonight was going to be an episode recorded with a registered sex offender who was convicted of child sexual assault.
Deep.
Yeah, it was rough.
Deep and a pioneering episode for sure.
I've never seen anything like it. And there's reasons why I wanted to do it personally.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't to highlight him. It was to try to get into the mind of true evil.
For sure.
True evil. So before we do that, before we get into any of that, let's go with this week's social media question. Before we go with this week's social media question, we have to give a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police. We certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the guys over at Toyota of Hackensack. So if you're looking for a car, go to toyotahackensack.com. So Tom, this week's social media question comes from Bay, like as in baby 23. Yeah, it's not just B-A-Y. It's not somebody who lives on the Bay.
B-A-E.
Now, I pulled this one specifically because you're in here. You've been involved with the podcast for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And you've seen a lot of stuff. You're probably one of my closest confidants in the world. You know the interior and exterior of what this world is like. You coming in fresh-faced. So it's going to be two different perspectives. It's going to be me coming from a 4-year perspective, you coming from a year and a half perspective. You've probably listened to a lot of podcasts prior to coming in here when you were the guest. And you were
144.
144. So Bay writes, what was something unexpected that you found out from being involved in a podcast, both good and bad? So, Tom, you're the newer one.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I'm the rookie, junior guy. So
low man on the totem pole.
Yes. I'll say this.
I heard you're getting married, too.
Yeah. Oh, check out the social media posts.
I heard you're getting married.
There's some mystery. It's shrouded in mystery. Got to comment on that one. And it's a good one.
Yeah.
So I would say before coming in on the show, believe it or not, even at the time, because it's only about a year and a half ago, I had never listened to a full episode of any podcast ever.
So you're coming in fresh.
Obviously I knew about the world of podcasting. And when I know people that were sort of absorbed and they really become loyal fans to whoever the platform is, this one included, I thought that podcasts overall were a complete and colossal waste of time and energy.
Boy, what a shift the world has taken in recent current events.
Absolutely. But even at the time, I mean, you're still growing. I really thought they were just utterly useless.
I'm a grower, not a shower.
Yeah, I could. Two Irishmen. We can come clean.
We can come to terms with that.
And then after doing the show, and then watching other episodes, I said, these guys are really onto something. So first I had this negative impression, and I think it was mainly out of ignorance. Um, but then doing the show and then seeing the other episodes, and it's turned me on to other platforms as well. Obviously loyal most to this one. Uh, but they are really something special. And I think what's special about this platform, and other people do adversity and things like that, but it's unique here. You really get to the heart of the suffering, how they flip it around and grow.
Well, the
And it's
secret
helped me
is
grow.
I try never to bring somebody in here while they're in the midst of their suffering, okay? Because it just doesn't work. Because then it becomes a big giant complaint session.
Pity party.
Yeah, and that's not what this is about. This is about, what did you learn? You know, we ended the same way. What did you learn from your suffering? Because suffering is the best teacher in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I might be the exception to the rule because, I was still going through my stuff, and I still am, but
Yeah, but you're not in the depths. Like it wouldn't have worked if you were in the depths.
yeah.
While you are, because suffering is ongoing. You
Mhm.
know, I still suffer with post-traumatic stress. I still suffer with nightmares. I still suffer, every once in a while I'll have a flashback, or I'll get in that certain mood. So you never really get past it, but you gain certain clarity. You gain a lot of, you get an education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put it on one of the posts today. As a matter of fact, I put suffering equals survival training.
You become battle tested. Bobby hates when I say that, because me and Bobby, when we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. You become battle tested. And so the next time, because there is one constant throughout life, it's death, taxes, and stuff like this, but there's
Yeah.
also suffering.
Mhm.
Right? Suffering is that universal thing that everybody from small child to 99-year-old adult has experienced at some form or some level. Hopefully it's never too bad, but it's the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
It's a commonality that separates a lot of people, but what it should really do is bind us together. And that's kind of why this show was all started. So what was some bad things that you didn't expect? What was something maybe negative that you didn't expect? The work?
No, the work is actually the fuel. The work keeps it going. I did realize that there is, just like any other venture, there's a business side, and the business side is interesting, but it's a necessity. So there's business, there's dollars, and like you say, it's mission, message, and money.
Yeah.
And money is part of it.
Yeah.
It's just a fact of life. So that was eye opening. But the amount of work, production, research, getting guests, it's a modern day Johnny Carson with the suffering feel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people from all walks of life, interesting people. So that was kind of a little bit of an eye opener, the business side of it.
So for me, there's a couple things, right? There's a couple things. When you first start out, you're like, hey, I'd love to have this big guest, and you're going to think you're going to get all these eyes on you and stuff like this, because you're trying to make success, right? You're trying to generate some sort of momentum with this stuff. Most podcasts last between 3 and 7 episodes. There's 5 million podcasts in the world, probably more now, but most of them end between 3 and 7. And if you go past 7, I think the ending is like 21 or 22, because people don't realize how much work is involved.
Yeah.
The work didn't really surprise me. It didn't surprise me because I have a good work ethic. So that didn't bother me. So you want to get these big names in here, and you're trying to, especially when you're starting out, it's like big is all relative. It's like, oh, you met the president once. Well, you're pretty big in my opinion.
Yeah.
But so we had a couple big guests in, and they never did well. What did well is the everyday person. Okay. Because a celebrity or a pseudo celebrity, whatever level that they're at, while people like watching them, they can't relate to them a lot of times. They can't relate to their lifestyle. They can't relate to their experiences. Some of them, yes, but the majority, not all. And I think, I had some sports stars on, and we expected it to, when Mike and I had them in, we were very excited. We expected it to do a little bit better, and it didn't, because they spent their whole lives having somebody promote for them, and podcasting is all self-promotion.
Yeah.
But what really surprised me is I'm very willing in giving when it comes out to the information about podcasting, educating, trying to teach people off of my bad beats. I was very surprised at the level of unethical behavior in some podcasters. Some of them, and we dealt with this in the police department. I always said police departments are like crabs in a barrel, right? You try to climb out, someone's pulling you back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of backstabbing. There really is a lot of backstabbing. It doesn't stop me from reaching out to a newer podcast because I wish there were some people who helped me along, but I wish the guidance was there for me. So I try to provide that to somebody else. But yeah, there's some people out there that will try to climb over you rather than pull you up together.
And I will say I've seen on other platforms, I'll amend my answer a little bit because I think that is something that was eye-opening to me being bad. There's certain digital fingerprints that you see on people's promos or intros or even the format in general. And while you're very generous, you help me.
Well, listen, when you're on the show is about you.
Yeah.
Okay, with the flavor of me. That's it. That's what it is. I'm the seasoning over top of the meal.
Yeah. But I've seen what I would call outright plagiarism in some cases. And you're being generous, you're trying to help. And
then you're looking at stuff. And me personally, when I see that, I'm like, I don't say nothing.
Yeah.
I don't say nothing. There was two guys who did a show. Mike and I used to talk about this all the time. There's two guys who did a show. I won't say the name of the show because it lasted one episode. And these are two guys that are pretty well versed in the podcast world, right?
Yeah.
And it lasted one episode. And when we found out that they were going to do this, they started doing all these promos and stuff. Mike and I are talking. Mike was pissed off. Like he was fit to be tied, ready to make phone calls. And I'm like, just sit.
Yeah.
Just sit. Because here's what I've learned about the podcast world. You can try to do what I do, but you're not going to succeed. I just did the Instagram Live. You be the first you. Don't be the next this.
Absolutely.
You can try to do what we do, but you're not. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. That's not what this is about. I have my own take on things. I have my own way of doing things. I have my own style. And you can try to do what I do. Good luck. Yeah. I wish you. So all I said with Mike, after I calmed him down, I'm like, just wait. And sure enough, one episode and it ended because what we do here is very draining. It's a lot of soul searching. It's not easy to do, and sitting here and listening to people unleash their suffering on you because you ingest it. Yeah. And that's why there's certain times you'll see us put in episodes where it's a lighter mood. I'll bring in my guys and we'll have a lighter mood. We'll sit here and we'll laugh and we'll have a great time. Those are very
cleansing, I would say.
They are cleansing, but they're also very calculated and very, very purposeful. And that's one of the things that people got to understand. So, podcasting is a very, very strange world.
It is.
It's a very, very strange world. You got some interesting characters, but it's also a very powerful platform. We saw that in current events. It changed the election. 100% it changed the election. And I think this is where people are getting fed with a lot of their information, a lot of their entertainment. And I'm happy to be part of it. I'm just happy to be this little cog in this giant piece of machinery, and hopefully it lasts as long as people want to listen.
Well, I think you hit it on one point specifically. When people say, hey, be the next Joe Rogan, be the next this. You said on the IG Live today, you just want to be the next us, the next suffering platform. And I said, you know what? Be a standout. Don't be a stand-in. Yeah. Because if you're copying somebody else's work, you're just a stand-in.
You're a leech. You're a chicken hawk.
Yeah.
I want to be the predator, not the prey.
Yeah, and it doesn't breed authenticity. This comes across as genuine.
It is. It is. All my reactions are genuine. Listen, for people who understand, I do have this. I have these outlines here. I would say I go off these outlines 5% of the time.
Yeah.
I do this in case you're not going to talk.
I won't do that to you.
So Bay23, thanks for sending in your question. Keep sending in your questions. We will try to get them on the air. So,
yeah, this is.
So, this gentleman, let me give you the whole backstory. This gentleman reaches out to me on my website, and I'm very responsive when somebody reaches out to me on social media, my website, whatever it is. And he says, I like what you're doing. I want to know if I can help. When somebody reaches out like that, you're like, yeah, sure. There's really nothing for them to do to help. And stupidly, a lot of the times I say, let's have a conversation. Yeah. Let's talk. And I'm not one of these people, you see this on LinkedIn all the time. Well, schedule a time in my calendar.
Yeah. Red flag right
I'm
there.
going to tell you right now, If you're telling me to schedule time in your calendar, you're not going to get a scheduled time from me.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I'm not interested. You're trying to build a fake business, and it's such a turnoff because it's salesy. Okay, what am I getting sold on today?
For sure.
But anyway, this guy reached out to me, and we had a conversation. And throughout the conversation, what came up was horrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mike and I had always said from the beginning of the show, we will sit down and talk to anybody. This one tested me.
Mm-hmm.
This one put my resolve to the test. So this gentleman from a different state tells me his story. I said, so what do you got?
Yeah.
Says, well, I did 4 years in prison for child sexual assault over clothing. And I'm sitting there going, damn. And I'm thinking about this, and I think, so one of the things people don't know, and this is the bombshell. I'm a victim of child sexual assault. I've never said that publicly on air.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody comes to me and says that, I just felt numb. Like I'm back in that 7-year-old kid's body and trying to disassociate yourself. And I sat there very, very quiet, and I'm trying my best to listen to this, and it's horrifying to listen to. That's one of those crimes that is unforgivable. We hear on podcasts, and we hear murderers, we hear all this stuff. We hear the worst of the worst of society because, especially mobsters, right? So mobsters do all this bad stuff. They're very capitalizing on people's insecurities, people's bad behavior. They're just capitalizing people. And we eat it up.
Mm-hmm.
We eat that shit up.
Yeah.
And why do we eat it up? Because it's fascinating. It's a different world. It's escapism. It's like, why do we listen to Navy SEALs? Because we're not Navy SEALs. I'm sure Navy SEALs don't listen to other Navy SEALs and go, wow, that's cool.
Right.
That's just another day at the office. But pedophiles?
It's the most
egregious.
It is. There's nothing worse. Society views it as the most egregious, unforgivable crime.
But here's the problem. And I paused for a second, and I asked him, and I'm thinking, like, all these thoughts are going through my head, and it's stinging and it's hurting. I asked him 2 questions. First question, I said, were you convicted of it? And he says, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. And I said, second, and most importantly, did you do it?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I did it.
What range of emotions are going through your head when you get that admission, right?
A lot of anger.
I suspect so. There's
a lot of anger involved in this. I'm like, you motherfucker, you piece of shit. And that's how I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard, and then I started putting myself into the business mindset. Now, mind you, coming from being a victim of sexual assault as a child.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remove myself from that. Now I'm a man of faith. Okay. And my faith teaches me that everybody deserves a shot at redemption.
Yeah.
Not restoration, redemption. Everybody earns a shot. So I took myself, and now mind you, it wasn't until recently, just going back a little bit with my own incidents, my own sexual assault, I harbored a lot of hate. I was able to forgive the guy who shot at me because it was impersonal. It wasn't shooting at me. I was able to forgive that. And once I did, I know the power of forgiveness. I know that weight that was lifted off my shoulder, but for some reason I couldn't get past what happened to me as a child. Until one day, I had like this moment in my car where if I was standing up, it would have brought me to my knees. Thank God I was sitting down, where tears are flowing down there, and it was a true miracle. It really was. If you don't believe in miracles, well, I experienced one. It's mind-blowing. And then I started thinking about my abusers, and verbally out of my mouth, this just happened. I'm going to say probably a month and a half ago, where I just said, you know what? I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I'm not going to forget, but it was a moment for me where I just released all this. Now, fast forward, this guy calls me knowing that am I just saying the words, or do I really, really forgive my abusers?
Yeah. That forgiveness is more for you, I'm assuming, than for them, right? or 50-50? I don't know.
It's taking, if you're not forgiving of somebody, they still hold weight over you. I had to release that weight off of me. Okay, I had to release it and just totally say it is what it is. I can't change that past, but what I can do is forgive, and I can move forward. I need to move forward. This is not you need to move forward. This is I need to move forward, and the only way I'm going to be able to move forward is to try to overcome this and forgive this, to overcome that suffering that I preach constantly on this show. You know, there's a lesson in suffering. Well, this is a fucking hard lesson.
A big one.
So when this guy told me what he did, there was a lot of anger built up inside of me. And I didn't know. And now this is a couple weeks after that event in my car.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know, I'm looking up at God and I'm like, you're testing me. Boy, are you testing me? Are these just words, this forgiveness just words? Or is this really what I believe? And I'm committed to that forgiveness. So I said, okay. Let me take a walk into the mind of true darkness.
Yeah.
True darkness. Let me see if this guy's willing to come in, because I've never seen anything like this.
Nowhere.
All right. And it wasn't to highlight him.
Mm-mm.
It was to educate. You know, if I could sit across from somebody who did the worst crime and the worst offense that you could possibly do, which is the theft of innocence. If I can sit across from them and look them in the eye and try to find out what makes them tick.
Mm-hmm.
Because for years now, what we've done is we've buried our heads in the sands. We've tried to forget that this and ignore that it's out there, and it didn't go away.
No, in fact, it probably exacerbates the problem.
Correct.
Because nobody's talking about it.
You know, there's a big thing with sexual assault now, right? So if you see anything written with sexual assault, they'll say essay.
Correct.
Well, fuck you with your essay, because all you're doing is you're devaluing what I went through. You're devaluing what I feel. So if I sat across from a pedophile and I'm able to look them in the eye and try to find out what makes them tick, what real evil looks like, maybe I can have a better understanding on how to protect, on how to advocate for figuring this problem out, because I strongly believe it's a bent gene that they have in them.
Yeah.
And then put the other half of that is put my forgiveness to the test.
Now, I'm wondering if you had your reaction. So you're seeing it through the lens of a survivor, a child survivor. But are you also seeing it as a parent?
Oh, yeah.
Having children, you know, as we both do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's a tough hurdle. Like, listen, hey, I can say I fought my battle, or, you know, this thing, whatever God chose to put in front of me, this event, and it changes the trajectory of a child in through manhood, adulthood. Now, are those two things kind of running neck and neck in your head as you're wrestling with it? Trying
to figure out that puzzle, that enigma that is a child sexual predator.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and I'm saying, what? Oh my God. And then you start, so when you had your children, when your children are babies, especially your first one, you're holding that baby in your hand and you're thinking about because you're a protector, right? So you're a police officer, you're a protector. And I guarantee it went through your head at some point saying, if anybody touches this little precious miracle of a baby, what did you tell yourself? What were those thoughts in your head? I know exactly what my thoughts were in my head. I still remember it.
I would probably lose self-control. I don't know if there's a way that I would be able to control.
There's a defense for that. It's passion provocation.
When my oldest daughter was young, and I witnessed an incident. It was on Christmas Day, as a matter of fact. And there was another kid around her, a boy, and she's holding a Christmas present. And we coddled the firstborn. This little kid is a child, right? You know, so you got to give it a little bit of play there. Comes up to her, smacks the Christmas present out of her hands. She starts to cry, and the little kid comes back and then laughs at her.
Ooh.
I don't know how I controlled myself during that time, but I did. Now, obviously, sexual assault. The other euphemism that they use for child abuse is CA.
CA, which is, again, nonsense.
Euphemisms hide the raw, real pain.
It's a visceral word, and it's supposed to elicit a response that almost makes you want to throw up.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to do. And by giving them initials, it's not making the problem go away.
No.
I don't care who I offend. Geez, did I worry about who I was going to offend while I was going through it? No.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to let this stuff go. And I remember looking at my young boy, my oldest boy, Patrick. I remember looking at him as a baby, and as they grew, and just to drive this home, and I'm like, if anybody hurts this kid, I'm somebody's going to die. I'm going to tell you right now, something's going to die. So there was an incident in the first house that I lived in. I lived on a small side street, 25 miles an hour, and there was a guy down the street who was always drunk, always high. And he would like to drive as fast as he can down this street. Now, my street was so small that you're lucky if you're going to be able to get up to 45 if you went soup to nuts.
Mm-hmm.
This guy would drive you'd hear him right around the corner, gun it. So my son's about 3, and stop him. I said, look, man, hey, listen, I got small kids. Please slow down. Please slow down. He looks at me with his vacant look.
Oh, boy.
And keeps going. All right. Does it again the next day. I stop him again. I said, I asked you once nicely. I'm going to ask you again nicely because I'm trying to be a better person. Could you please slow down on these side streets? I have small children. There's other small children in this area. Looks at me blankly again. Third time I stop him. I said, look, all right, now it's time to stop being nice. I'm going to tell you this right now, and this is not a euphemism. This is not an allegorical. This is absolutely what's going to happen. It's either you are going to slow down or I am going to kill you. I'm not talking about, I'm going to beat you up. I'm actually going to kill you. And I will sit in a jail cell for the rest of my life happily because I love my children more than I love my freedom.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Guy never drove down my street again.
Mission accomplished.
Right.
Hopefully he's not speeding on another street with somebody else's
I don't
kids. But
think the guy's alive anymore. I do believe he passed away from substance abuse.
All right, I was going to say maybe he ran into you a 4th time.
No. I did not touch him.
Good for you.
So this, and I thought about that when I was talking to this guy, and I'm like, I have to be brave enough to sit across from a monster. I have to be brave enough to look that monster in the eye and not blink.
Yeah.
The hardest thing in the world is to look the devil in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And not blink. I think the last person to do it was Johnny, as Charlie Daniels once said.
That's right.
And he won that golden fiddle.
Sure did.
Because he wasn't afraid. So I have to be unafraid. I have to be unapologetic, unafraid. And now, mind you, I did not tell this guy anything about my past. And I said, okay, let's do this. And I think the first person I called was you. What was your reaction when I told you?
Shock. I mean, there's a shock value right off the bat. And we talked about it and saying, like, this isn't anywhere. It's a societal ill. It's definitely suffering.
So when I approached you about that,
yeah,
I want to know what you felt personally. The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction, tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques, uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com.
That it was an area that touched upon some history. I knew that it was going to be something that was painful for you. I was concerned about backlash, and then I was concerned about the platform, the media outlets. But within a few minutes of us talking, I said, yeah, absolutely, because we're not being true to ourselves, right? Like there would be a bit of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That we're willing to talk to anybody, good, bad, ugly.
Or, we can't put that accept on there. We can't.
No.
Otherwise, we're not holding true to our mission.
And in no way is it aggrandizing or validating the offense.
Oh, we had it all planned out. Like we knew how we had to frame it. Now, getting it past YouTube, these were all the little particulars that we sat and we talked about and we discussed.
Yeah.
But the one person I told, and this is going to surprise some people. I told Bobby, I had a long discussion with Bobby because Bobby's going to tell me exactly what he believes, and
shooter.
And I take Bobby's counsel when it comes to this stuff because while Bobby is, listen, he's a silver-tongued devil at times. He's ultimately looking out for the well-being of my reputation, for the show's reputation, and I know when I ask him questions like this, he's going to give me what he believes is going to protect me the most. Mm-hmm. All right, and that's a real friend. I need that. And listen, I want to hear opinions. I'm not saying I'm going to take the opinion, but I want to hear different avenues because I have a way of looking at things, and sometimes I can get that tunnel vision. I want to make sure I'm not getting that tunnel vision. Bobby was very dead set against it. He goes, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. And then for those reasons that we just discussed, I explained it to Bobby. And so one thing about him is when I explain my reasons, my purpose, he'll actually say, he's like, all right, I get it now. I get it now. And and I wasn't trying to convince him. I wasn't looking for validation on it. It was almost like I need to do this. Like I felt really compelled to do this. Mm-hmm. And then it's not as much as, I want to do this, my compulsion to do this for my own personal reasons.
Yeah.
We had to start thinking about the business side of it. We have to protect the brand. We have to protect our reputations. And that was a sticky situation.
Yeah.
And so you and I sat down and we started talking about how do we frame this thing. Now, when somebody comes on this show, it is never hero villain. Mm-hmm. We're on equal footing. In order for this to work, it had to be hero villain. It just had to be, not looking for any type of forgiveness for this stuff. It was true education. I want to know, like, why did you do this? When did it happen? How did you lead up to it? What was your upbringing like? And I know all these things now because this episode didn't cancel out until Friday.
Yeah.
Friday, and this is Wednesday. So I had everything all done. I had all the prep. I had, we were going to do an opening. We had it all set up. And I was committed to doing it, and I was nervous. I don't know about you, but I was nervous.
Personal reactions, I think. And I was a little cautious if the offender was going to try and legitimize or say they were railroaded or it was wrong. Like, I think we were expecting a full-throated, contrite explanation, what happens, better understand it.
Well, I had to come to terms with that myself. I had to make sure that I will not allow this person to make any excuse. Yeah. I cannot allow that because there is no excuse for this. Hey, she was asking for it because she was wearing tight pants. None of that shit.
Yeah.
This had to be dead balls honest. I need to know you, and I had to be willing to tell this guy, you're going to need to fall on your sword on this one. Big time.
Absolutely.
And you're going to take multiple stab wounds because we're worried about on the back end, like people are going to think we're glorifying this stuff. We weren't glorifying this stuff. And even in the opening that I was going to read in front of the camera, I had to tell a little bit of my personal story so people understood.
Yeah.
You know, that's the whole thing. It's people need to understand why this was so important to me. You know, and then there's the YouTube problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I thought about that one as well. YouTube's going to flag us. YouTube's going to bring us down. And they're going to bring us down without watching or caring about what our purpose is, what our reason is. So that was a big problem. And I still don't know the answer to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would have had to not say certain things. You know, they got to protect their platform. I get it. I understand.
For sure.
I understand. And there was people dead set against us. I told my wife this, and she just, you know, this one does one of these, goes, oof.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's heavy. I mean, there is no heavier topic to discuss. I would have been cautious if the offender was, like we mentioned, the genetic thing. He said, "Oh, I'm sick," like, you know, or like alcoholism or something like that. I think there's a bit more to unpack. You know, there's controllable behavior too.
I think the common misconception with childhood sexual assault offenders is that they were also abused as children. While that happens sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
it's not as common as you think it is. Statistically, it's just not there.
Right.
There's, like I said, there's something bent. Now, you see these people out here. You see one gets caught. As a matter of fact, I went to high school with a kid that got caught manufacturing child porn. I know him. I was in school with his sister.
Mhm.
Sister was my age. He was a year ahead of me. And when he got caught, I was like, it kind of makes sense. You know, I'm dead serious. That was my reaction to it.
Yeah.
And also the high school that I went to a Catholic high school. And it's not a knock against Catholic people, but there was 7 priests that I knew that got caught and then moved, because that's what the Catholic Church did back then.
Yeah.
And I remember calling, and I've said this before on the show, I remember calling up, I said this when Clark Fredericks was in here. I remember calling up my high school friend and going, yeah, did you hear about Father so-and-so? Like, yeah. And I'm like, did he ever? He's like, no, do you ever do you? And I'm like, no, what, am I not attractive? You know, why deny me? So I do believe that these people are, it's not just about sexual gratification.
Power.
It's power. It's no different than somebody who rapes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the act itself. It's more about, I got something broken in me and I need to, it's like a bully, but, you know, with sex involved.
Yeah.
A bully will do something similar to that. And the problem with a bully is they just maybe don't have that in them to do that.
Sure.
But it's all about the power. It's all about making myself feel better in some form or fashion.
Transferring the pain maybe off of themselves. I don't, you know, again, it's not a justification, but this is a stat that this may be correct or not, but from what I understand, 86% approximately, you know, people can fact check it if they want, but 86% of these things go unreported.
More than that. You know, more than that. Like when Sherry Alsop and I were out in Parker, Arizona for the Colorado River Indian tribes.
Yeah.
You know, so sexual assault happens, and this is just sexual assault. It's not only child sexual assault, but 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It's 10 times the national average. I tried to do the math. The math isn't the easiest thing in the world to do on that statistic.
Yeah.
But it comes out, what I get, 7 or 8 out of 10 on reservation land. And here's the thing, it's generational. The mothers had it happen to them. And now the children, so the mothers got through it. So now the children are doing it. And it's usually a family member. And what do? They're going to go to make the police report and get the rape kit done by their uncle. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's a small tribe. It's like 3,000 people.
Yeah.
They're going to go to their uncle. And then they're going to have to go to the hospital where their aunt's working. And guess what? The laws are different on tribal land. The guy's out in a year and a half, and he's back in the area. Yeah, he's a registered sex offender, but he's now bragging to his friends like, hey, I did that, you know? And it's very different. These poor people out there, I mean, my heart bleeds for them.
Talking about having the guy on too, right? So even the past guests, you work with Sherry Alsop, and it's sexual assault training from the survivor's viewpoint. But even the other guests, so you have, you know, Sherry stands out, obviously, one of them. You have Amanda Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
You have Clark Fredericks. You have Seth Gale. Like,
Yeah.
Doesn't it do a disservice to those past guests if we're here to hear you as a victim, that we don't at least try and unpack the mind or the process or the dysfunction?
The grooming from their perspective,
Yeah.
from the offender's perspective.
Right. Like, I mean,
We learn about murder from the offenders.
Mindhunter is one of the things that come up. You have FBI profilers that profile the criminal mind. Well, you know what? I don't think we can farm everything out to law enforcement, right? If it's a societal ill and we can have a conversation, you know what? Maybe that might draw the attention of law enforcement and say, hey, we saw you talk to an offender. Your interview techniques or the things you talked about, we'd like to adopt that as part of our law enforcement, forensic interviews.
And then you start to look at, they know, so FBI is really good at profiling a potential serial killer.
Yeah.
Step A, B, C, and D. They know the what's common out there. And when they can't catch somebody is because they're doing something uncommon, right? So they know the common, you torture or kill animals as a young kid, and then you start experimenting here and doing this and this. They're like the whole Jeffrey Dahmer thing.
Yeah.
But we don't do that with offenders of sexual assault. We've had many victims of sexual assault in here, but it's like reading a book where you're only reading the left side of the page. You're not getting the full picture. So I think our understanding of childhood sexual assault is very one-sided. And I don't think that does justice to anybody.
No, not at all. I'll throw a historical figure out here, and you're good at history. You'll probably know it right off the bat. Dennis Lynn Rader.
No, never heard that one.
That's the BTK killer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was Wichita, Kansas. So he was convicted of 10 murders. They suspect more, but it was probably between like 1974 and 1991 that most of those things occurred. And one of the first family victims, it was an entire family. So it was a mother, a father, and 2 children. I believe they were aged like 9 or 11 at the time. And there was a lot of mental dysfunction there. They don't really hear about the BTK killer that much.
I know. I remember what he looks like, mustache.
Yeah.
He looks like a normal guy from the 80s, right?
Yeah. And like these offenders are hiding in plain sight. Like he actually worked as a security professional. Yeah. He was a member of his church.
Well, what about the Golden State Killer?
Yes.
Yeah, he was a police officer.
Right. The Raider was a member of the church, a member of the Boy Scouts, which,
red flag.
Insert whatever there. But then he went dormant until about 2004, and he was taunting the police. Now his story has been highlighted in criminal profile things. Why would we just overlook or just say, we're gonna that is too taboo for us to talk about? What more important thing to talk about?
So I think it's those taboo subjects that we need to dive deep into to get a full understanding, and we can't just hear it from one side.
No,
we just can't. And so that was my thinking when this guy's sitting here talking to me, and I'm kind of quiet on the phone. You've spoken to me enough on the phone. I'm rarely quiet on the phone, and I'm sitting there and I'm just listening to this. And I said, okay, let's do this. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
So then there was logistics. So he's coming from a different state. He's still on parole. He's on supervised release. I said, call your PO. And now, mind you, I rarely vet people. I vetted this guy.
That deserves it.
It happened.
Yeah.
It definitely happened. So then I said, call your PO. And, he surprisingly, he agreed to do the interview. That was going to be one of my questions to him. Like, why are you here doing this? Why are you talking about this?
Yeah. Are there ulterior motives here as well?
And I was trying not to put myself at an elevated position where I'm speaking down to him, because I don't think it would do justice to me getting the information that I wanted. I had to try to speak to him on a level. I know it's an interrogation technique where you kind of sympathize. Hey, listen, a girl, I've sat in interview rooms with child sexual predators, and it's like, hey, listen, man, the girl's a pretty girl. I get it. Yeah, I understand it. Or you try to gain some sympathy from them. But it was hard when I was developing the script for that. I was like, because some of these questions I want to hire home, I'm like, you fucking perverted motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like that's something that wanted to come out of my mouth. And it probably would have.
Visceral.
Probably would have. You would have seen me get a little agitated, especially if he was unapologetic.
Yes. That would have been a problem.
That would have been a huge problem. But we also made the commitment that if we're not getting what we want, we're not going to air the episode.
For sure. And really, it's an opportunity because you really don't get a lot of the predators or offenders, however you want to put them. You don't really get them volunteering to talk that much.
No.
So that's an opportunity you know, as distasteful as it might be, we're not doing anything good by just burying it. That's that's one of the things I appreciate about our group, right?
Yeah.
We don't let anything sit for more than, I don't know, an hour or two.
Because it can't. It can't.
I'm learning.
Yeah, we can't let it sit. Not with the group we have.
Nope.
But I also leaned on this group, especially with this one, because I was having a tough time with this. Internally, I was fighting. I'm like, I want to do this. Should we do this? You know, I'm thinking about, okay, what's the benefit? Like, to you, what would be the benefit of doing something like this?
Mm-hmm. Awareness. You have the potential to expose the predator mind. It might even go into prevention. You know, there might be some sort of intervention program or something that could maybe drive somebody away from having another victim, because there's a trail of bodies and they survive. Like, they're not murdered. Their life didn't end, but it was life-changing events.
And this guy wasn't one of the people that drive up in the white van with the fisheye in the back. Like the typical thing, you think your kids are going to get snatched off the street. It doesn't. By far and large, it does not happen that way. It's usually a family member, acquaintance.
Yeah.
And I know from different people who I've sat across from the grooming process, and I was interested to hear the grooming process from his side. Like, where did you fucking learn how to do this shit?
Yeah.
You know, where's the manual? Because I want to see the manual and I want to read the manual so I can protect those people that I care about, those people that are close to me, and anybody I can. I'm a youth football coach.
Yeah.
All right. I watch out for this shit.
Yeah.
Okay. I watch somebody acting different. I watch how their behavior's changing from A to B. I watch them being disassociative. I watch them bullying other kids. I watch all this stuff and I'm looking at behavior. I'm trying to coach the kids how to play football, but I'm also watching their behavior. I'm tuned into the kid itself.
Yeah.
And I'm very hypersensitive to that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I mean, your history.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's hard to separate yourself, I would think, as a podcaster and interviewer, because it hits home for you.
Yeah.
Man. Like, that was brave for you to even do it. It's not about, I think somebody that might say that you were going to do it, it's a sensationalized thing. You're looking for grabs. It's much deeper than that. Much deeper.
It is so much deeper. But on that angle, yes, I was thinking, I'm like, I have never seen anything like this. If a parent is scrolling through YouTube and they see something like this, I would hope they watch it.
Yeah.
As hard as it is to watch, I would hope they watch it because it's an education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm gonna do everything I can to protect my children until the day I die.
Yeah.
I don't care if I live to be 100, it ain't going to happen. But let's say I live to 100, you know, that means my kids are going to be in their 60s. I'll put myself to the death, you know, in order to save them.
Of course. I would think to a lesser degree too. This is on the bottom of the list, but there could likely be those out there that are falsely accused, right? So if we sort of unpack what the pattern is, what the pathology is. Listen, we're cops. We do have, you know, we got a little inside track and investigating things. Probably a little bit more than your average Joe. You know, we're not psychologists, but we might see a pattern where, you know, hey, that's the scarlet letter, right? I mean, we're talking that it's nobody's seen. What if somebody happens to be falsely accused and they just didn't exhibit the pattern? That might be a way to exonerate somebody and save a life there. More importantly is the survivors. Don't no two ways about it.
You know, you always hope that the truth will come out in the end.
Yeah.
But we all know that's not always true. It might take 20, 30 years. We've seen people in prison 20, 30 years wrongly accused of crimes.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, but it did happen. It's happened multiple times. Tawana Brawley.
The lacrosse team.
The lacrosse team.
Duke lacrosse team.
The Duke lacrosse team. Tawana Brawley, I can't remember who she accused. But Sharpton was involved in it.
Yeah, I remember that. Howard Beach and all that stuff.
It was found to be false. And
yeah.
But then there's the fine line with law enforcement. You know, and I've seen this in coaching. Okay, removed from law enforcement. If a kid comes up here and says that, you cannot dismiss it. You have
No.
to take it seriously as if it was fact, and let the chips fall where they may.
Sure.
Let the justice system do its job. But then I thought about, here's another thing I thought about, where what if the victim watches this? I did think about that.
Sure.
Because you want to be kind to the victim, you want to be respectful to the victim. As much as I'd want to talk to the victim and reach out to the victim, I certainly hope they would understand my purpose for doing this.
Yeah.
I was in your spot. So I need to understand this. Maybe one day you're going to need to understand this as well. So let's document this. Let's figure this out together.
Maybe they might hear answers they never heard. I'm presuming that when someone is victimized in this way, probably one of the first questions that someone who is sexually assaulted, what's the first thing they're going to say? Why? Right? Isn't that the first question? Why?
Yeah.
And it lingers. You know what I mean?
Here's another problem too, is we're thinking about this as with a rational mind, as people who don't have this affliction.
Mm-hmm.
And we're thinking about it like, how could you do this? Because it's foreign to us.
Mm-hmm.
In my darkest times, when I tried to kill myself multiple times, there were people who were saying, like, how could you do that? Like, I don't get it. And I said, because you're thinking about it with your rational mind, and you're trying to rationalize an irrational behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't understand what it's like to be in that mindset where you don't see anything. Look, Mike was there. So you don't see anything. All you do is see those steps in front of you, and you don't see the shit on the sides. You're missing the picture. And I think that's what we're doing with situations such as this, is we're focused on the victim, and we should be focused on the victim
For sure.
But we're focused here, and we're not looking at all the shit on the sides, because we're not getting the whole story.
Yeah.
We're getting half the story, and I'm not saying the story is wrong, but we're getting half of the information. And I just think that does a disservice to the whole world of sexual assault and sexual assault advocacy.
So you have a victim, right? One of the things that at least I understand is that there is self-blame from the survivor standpoint.
Yeah,
Like
what did I do?
What did I do? And then it turns into self-loathing, right? And then that metastasizes, and it grows into adulthood. Perhaps a survivor would see that. And one of the questions, and getting back to your point on how you question this particular offender, is, were you convicted? More importantly, did you do it?
I had to see if he would own it.
Yeah.
That was the most important question, because if that question was anything but yes, we're done here.
Yeah. You're just pleading your case out in a different forum. Like, wait, this isn't a courtroom, you know, for you to right the wrongs of justice and everything else. We want to know, and we want to know what your path.
I'm not here to absolve you of anything.
Nope. But you are giving them a shot at redemption. And if their intentions are true, hear it out. We'll hear you out.
Well, one of the things I want the audience to comment below is a couple. I got a couple questions that I want them to comment.
Yeah.
I want them to comment. Do you think we should have done this episode? Do you think this episode would have been worthwhile? Do you think this episode would have had any value in curbing childhood sexual assault?
Yeah.
Do you think that this was ethical? Do you think it was unethical? All these different questions that I still have in my head.
Yeah.
It's probably the most toiled over episode I've ever done while sitting in here or on the show in general.
Yeah.
Now, again, with the amount of people that we had in here, this is episode 225. Chances are, statistically, we've had somebody who is preyed upon a child.
Yeah.
Statistically. And we just don't know it yet. They're
For sure.
walking amongst us.
Yeah.
God, I wish it would stop. I wish I had the pill to give these people with these urges. Say, hey, take this pill and you won't have that urge anymore.
Yeah.
And end it.
Yeah, and like what you said, it's not a sexual thing. It is power. I mean, we know that in the world of regular, quote unquote, regular sexual assault. It's probably a bad term to use, but upon a child.
So there's a group of people out there to think these people should be castrated, they should be killed, they should be put to death, they should be. I'm of a different mindset, because the eradication of that person who
Mhm.
did that, you don't get to learn anything. I prefer to make them lab rats.
I agree with you 100%, and I'll tell you why. Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
Why do we have Gitmo? If you know, listen, there's
It's housed many different types of offenders throughout the years.
right, and you know, you always try and take the offender alive.
Correct.
You know, listen, if there's sometimes where, you know, that's not an option. This is an investigative asset, and who knows if this had actually happened? Perhaps there would be a viewer who's a forensic psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Might be enlightening to them.
So do you think this episode's ever going to happen?
I think it's gonna. I think this one right now is
Maybe not this guy, but
no, not this.
somebody
Agreed.
else.
Not this guy, but I think this lays the groundwork because we had planned to do a disclaimer. You know,
Mhm.
we're not aggrandizing this. We're not justifying it. You know, this is going to be hard to watch. I would venture to say we're going to get feedback on this, and we're going to hear from people, probably offenders and survivors alike, and maybe people in the mental health community as well as forensic investigators.
So what we're trying to stop is long-term damage by getting it at the source,
Yeah.
right? Getting it at the source, figuring out what these people do, figure out where they're learning their grooming techniques, because there's one constant throughout all these child sexual predators. They it's like they do the same thing and they play off the same playbook.
Yeah.
It's almost mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know where they learn this. I want to know why they do this stuff. I want to know what this does. Is it a conscious effort or is it subconscious? Like what's the deal here?
Yeah. Perhaps shame afterwards. Was there regret, you know, immediately after, or do they feel like some type of compulsion, or is it anger? Man, like there's a lot of important things to talk about, and this is one of them. Burying it down deep is not an answer.
I don't think we could understand it fully until we do. And that's going to be a tough conversation.
Reducing the stigma for the survivors, too.
Yeah.
Come on. Like, let's peel back this ugly curtain and get some shit done.
Ultimately, with the hope that one day they can not to forgive the person, but to just release that weight off of their shoulders, because that's a lifelong, that's generational trauma right there.
Absolutely.
And it's got to stop. It
Yeah.
just really has to stop. So people listening right now, what I really want to say to the camera is, you really have no idea the lifelong descent into trauma that things like this really perpetrate inside a young mind. So Tom, listen, we're coming to the end of this thing here.
Yeah.
Of course, follow you, at the Tom Flynn on Instagram.
Yeah. All social platforms.
All social platforms. You've done really good at branding yourself. So this episode that we were planning on doing particularly, we went through a lot of suffering on this.
Kind of did.
We did. We went to this thing soup to nuts. We probably spent more pre-production on this than any other episode we've ever done.
Yeah.
So throughout that journey, there was suffering.
There was.
So what's that suffering taught you?
So it taught me a little bit about the kind of man you are. And I'm not saying this to blow smoke, believe me. Because if I thought it was wrong, I would tell you.
Mhm.
And you expect that from me. But knowing at least parts of your personal journey and you having the bravery to sit within inches or feet of something that cuts so deeply, I gotta say, I admire you for it, man. I really do. I don't know if I could do that. There's people in my life I can't forgive right now quite yet, but it teaches me a little bit of something about it. It's a bigger step to forgive than it is to hate.
Here's what all this has taught me. It taught me how many wonderful people I have in my life. All right. So from, being able to tell my wife about this.
Yeah.
I leaned heavily on you. I leaned heavily on Sherry Alsop.
Yeah.
Okay. I leaned heavily on Bobby Crudell and Mike DePalma in order to get the full picture, to make sure that I'm A, doing the right thing, and B, that this is not going to cause more harm to myself. And I don't believe that I would. So the one thing that this has taught me is actually I have a bit of gratitude for this. I have gratitude that people give me the space to take a risk, big risk.
Yeah.
But believe in me and believe in the path that I must take, because I do feel compelled to take a certain path in life. To believe in me enough that I am intelligent enough, conscious enough, moral enough, and I have enough faith that this is going to play out the way that it's supposed to. And they do give me a lot of grace, and I'm overly grateful for all that stuff.
Gratitude is something that I would not immediately see, but the way you put it there, yeah. And faith is the underlying ingredient. I mean, that's a foundation. If you didn't have faith,
this whole episode was a leap of faith.
Risk.
This was a risk. It was a leap of faith, but it was a risk I was willing to take.
Yeah.
You know, and here's how you know things are important. You're willing to let go of everything you built because you believe so harshly,
fervently,
in your mission.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this episode did for me.
Hats off to you, man.
I'm happy and I'm sad that it didn't get to happen.
Yeah.
But who knows, maybe in the future, something like this might.
I think so.
Yeah.
You're on the right track for sure.
So, Tom, I appreciate it, man. Appreciate you stepping up, because I think we needed to talk this one out.
Hell yeah, man.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the suffering of the worst offense with Tom and Kevin. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Suffering is the best education. Tom doesn't know how to cut his own hair. That's an inside joke.
That's a blooper reel.
Yeah, it's a blooper reel. We need to learn from evil. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just have a bent gene, but most importantly, is you have to hear the whole story in order to get a true understanding of the situation.
Well said.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media platforms. That's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. Follow Tom at the Tom Flynn. And of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.